And speaking of tools in the toolbox, Leader Ruggiero, let's turn now to the 195 lands, which is a major concern of yours, and you are very proud of the district commission that was created under your leadership. We're all excited about Wexford Science and Technology. We're very excited about the Joint Nursing Education Center across the street. So my question today is, are you satisfied that the 195 District Commission has the tools it needs, both statutorily and administratively, to establish and truly accelerate deal flow in that district?
Thank you, Lily.
Talking specifically about tax stabilization agreements.
Yes, I do. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the efforts of the administration in the City of Providence, along with the City Council, and along with my colleague and my counterpart on the other side, House Majority Leader John DeSimone, for the work that they did on the TSA. If you remember, last year we passed that in the Senate, sent it over to the House. It arrived at the House very late in session, and we ended up adjourning. I felt there was a need, a sense of urgency for that, because I didn't want this particular issue to fall by the wayside, and I felt that the Commission needed the tools to attract developers and companies into the state, and I thought that the tax stabilization agreement, because of the commercial rate in the City of Providence, would be that type of avenue. And it was done probably within a month's period of time when all the parties sat down. I thought it was a great cooperative effort, and the council ended up extending that to the Capitol, what was formerly the Capitol Senate Commission, as far as that process is concerned. So I think what this has done is probably given developers a sense of predictability, and that's what developers like. They like to know what they're facing. They like to know what they're coming into. They like to know, are our roads in good condition? Do we have any kind of relief that they can come where we can bring them in and locate them here? And they want a sense of predictability as to what they'll be facing. So I felt this was a tremendous effort on the part of the council and the administration in Providence, along with the state. And I think what you're going to be seeing in the very near future, if we haven't started seeing it now with Wexford, is a lot of interest in that particular area because of the passing of the tax stabilization agreement in the City of Providence.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Leader DeSimone, continuing on the themes of the City of Providence, certainly we see a lot of concerns about fiscal issues percolating, and we note this week that the mayor, as part of his legislative agenda, is desirous of new legislation to reopen the pilot agreement on the nonprofit institutions, universities, colleges, and hospitals. And this is a reopening of an agreement that we just finalized a couple of years ago. So I'm wondering, does this strike you as counterproductive, given the role that the universities, the colleges, and the hospitals play in advancing our economic development agenda?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank the Chamber for having me. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and especially to talk about the City of Providence, which is the city that I represent. So to answer your question, I think Providence has its struggles like many cities across the country. And Providence in particular, it's not a very big city like Boston or New York. So we have tax-exempt institutions, namely, colleges and hospitals. But in particular, I know the mayor came out with a new piece of legislation that I believe Representative Carnevale is going to be putting in shortly to try and have some type of formula to tax the non-mission essential properties that the colleges have. Providence is struggling financially like every city. And there are challenges, and I think this new mayor is trying to meet those challenges. But one thing we have to be mindful of, it's a partnership between the universities and the hospitals and the city. But in particular, Providence has 50% of its land base is tax exempt. So while there were agreements that were signed under the Cicilline administration and recently under Angel Tavares, those agreements are 10-year agreements, and each year that goes by, the city pays less and less taxes on properties that they purchase. So understanding that the city has struggles, I think it's important that we come up with some type of legislation, either through legislation or hopefully we could do it by agreement, where the tax exempt recognize and the state recognizes that the City of Providence is the capital city. it has a substantial amount of all the businesses in this city. And so that we have to come together and try and figure out a way where, $1 billion of real estate doesn't go without paying any taxes.
A lot of that is government real estate, though, correct?
Well, a lot of that is government real estate, but I believe, just take, for instance, not that you want to pick out any one institution, but take, for instance, Brown University. Brown University has over $1 billion of tax-exempt properties. Johnson & Wales has about $200 million. So I think while Brown University and Johnson & Wales and Providence College, we need those institutions, and they help the city be what the city is, and they could attract businesses because they're there. But at the same token, we have to have a balancing act where we generate some type of taxes so that we could pay for the services that we provide in terms of fire, rescue, police, so forth and so on. And that takes the drain away from the city and also frees up the state to give money to other communities. So I think there's a balancing act, and I welcome Mayor Alloza's input in trying to compete with those struggles, and hopefully we could have a happy medium and make the capital city strong, which, of course, will make the state of Rhode Island strong. So I'm happy to open up that dialogue, and I think we could do some good things in the city of Providence.
Turning to Senator Algier. Senator, the Brookings Institution, in conjunction with Battelle and Deloitte Monitor, a couple of days ago unveiled a very impressive report and set of recommendations on Rhode Island's future economic development strategy. And this report was the byproduct of a mandate by the General Assembly to create an economic development strategy for Rhode Island within the first year of the gubernatorial administration. So my question about the Brookings report is, one of the areas that they've identified is Rhode Island falling behind because of an inability to really nurture advanced industries. What do you think of the report, and what can we do to double down on innovation?
Thank you, Laurie. Good afternoon, everyone. We can differ about the words in the report. However, it clearly identifies and proposes that we build on the state's strengths, and that's why many of us are here today. And it does identify the positives and provides those positives as a foundation for us to continue to grow and continue in our efforts to make Rhode Island more economically competitive. They identified large sectors with growth potential, including the biomedical. And I could recall about a year or so ago, you and Mike Sabatoni, Laurie, came before the Senate, and you did identify those, biomedical. And that's something right now that's very positive, especially along the 195 land that Dominic discussed a short while ago. The report also outlines a strategy, and that's looking for opportunities to invest, especially in these large sectors. But we cannot lose sight of the big picture, and every one of us up here understands what that big picture is. We have to improve the business climate in Rhode Island. And if we do that by reducing broad-based tax reductions and we continue dealing with regulatory burdens, if we can do those two things, and we've made some headway over the past few years, we can allow businesses to expand on their own without too much government intervention. I believe if we continue in reducing our tax burden, and that's broad-based, and we reduce the regulatory burden, many of the businesses and CEOs in this room, whether you be small or large, can invest in your capital, whether it be human or physical capital. You can expand on your own and hire more people without government intervention. We're on the right track. The second point I want to make is that's an article that appeared in the PBN, I think it was a day or so ago, regarding CEOs, and CEOs need to come up to the plate more. And I can understand that. We're talking about public-private partnerships, working with our universities, whether they be public or private, working with businesses, working together as a legislature with the public ventures. CEOs and businesses do a lot in the state, whether they're investing right now, working, and some of them struggling, and also what they give back to the communities, the donations, the investments they make in nonprofits. They're doing a lot now. Yes, we need to capitalize on that, but a point in the Brookings report that kind of hit me the wrong way was the CEOs need to do more. They are doing a lot. They are doing a lot. We need to do more as a legislature, and I'm committed to work with my Democrat colleagues in the House and the Senate in making Rhode Island a better place and more competitive for businesses. We're on the right track. We are on the right track, and every one of us up here understands that, and we want to do the right thing. But I think if we work together and identify and giving the businesses the tools, they can do a lot on their own without government intervention.
Leader Newberry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The discussion around being competitive gives rise to an issue that's growing, a point of contention that's growing in legislatures all across the country. And that's around the topic of employment mandates. So what we're talking about here is long-term work scheduling requirements, otherwise known as predictive scheduling, paid sick leave, mandatory retirement plans, and on top of that, hikes in the minimum wage. How do we set the right balance between employers and employees in order to keep our small and mid-sized businesses competitive and also to keep Rhode Island businesses competitive vis-a-vis other places?
Well, I mean, I don't think this forum is really the place to talk into detail on each of those topics. That's sort of what committee hearings and such are for. But I would echo what Leader Algier's comments were a few moments ago. That dovetails into the question about competitiveness in general, whether it's employment mandates, taxes, regulation, et cetera. You folks know better than anybody what types of mandates help or hurt your business. You know what you can handle, what actually costs you money, what actually costs jobs, and what does not. And you need to be forthcoming with all of us as to all of that. It seems to me that from a business point of view, there are employment mandates that will actually cost jobs no matter where you are. And then there are employment mandates that you can handle so long as they're competitive with neighboring states or perhaps states in other parts of the country. One of the things about Rhode Island, as we all know, is every time one of these business rankings comes out, we rank 45th for this, 46th for that, 48th for that. That's what needs to change. One of the reasons I was disappointed, this is coincidental timing that the governor released her budget last night, but one of the reasons I was disappointed in the budget proposal is not that it's bad, it's just not good enough. Last year, we did collectively, with the governor, with the House and Senate leadership, move forward with a budget that actually started to advance the ball down the line, along with what Leader Algier's comments were, which is making Rhode Island more competitive in a lot of areas or other states, and I think we need to continue to do that. So when it comes to the specifics of employment regulation, minimum wage laws, family leave laws, et cetera, we need to hear from you, because there are always advocates out there, well-meaning advocates out there for all kinds of groups that are less interested in the fundamental costs of what they want. And you folks know better than anybody what those costs are. So you need to talk to us, and I've said this every time I've been up here. The business community of the state, not just the big business community, but the small business community of the state needs to be more active. I know you folks work incredibly hard. I find it difficult to set my schedule to come to this lunch every year because I should be working now too. So I understand that. But you need to do it. If you don't do it, we don't hear from the right groups of people on certain issues, and then we will make mistakes. So please get involved, stay involved on whatever the issue is.
Thank you, Leader Newberry. So at this point, I'd like to bring forth David Casey. David is Vice President of Workforce Strategies for CVS, and he is also Chief Diversity Officer at CVS. And David has a question to pose to our panel. And in terms of format, we have 2 additional questioners, and we will get you out 1:30-ish.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Over the past several years, there's been a growing dialogue about an increased focus on individuals in the labor market that are what people refer to oftentimes as middle skills. And these are jobs where you need something higher than a high school diploma or GED, but not quite a degree. So what are some of your thoughts on the best ways that we can serve workers in this middle skill segment of the labor market and the companies that are facing an increased demand for this skill set?
Well, I think our community college has to really ratchet it up, and I think they've been a little deficient in those areas. They should be collaborating with the businesses, finding out what skills are needed, and tailor programs to fit those demands. And I think with new leadership at CCRI, hopefully we're moving in the right direction. Career and tech training in the high schools. There's initiatives that are pending. They're not moving along as quickly as I would like, but we have to address that issue right in the high school. They do it very well in Massachusetts, and we have to have our children that are going to go into the trades, graduate, after the 12th grade with the skills required to perform the jobs that they want to perform. So it all goes into training, education and training in all the different areas, the different trades, is going to be critical for the future. So the governor's emphasis in those areas, I think, is well placed, and it's something that I think everybody supports. And as I've said, we'll look at the specifics of it in committee, and we'll look at the details, because that's probably where we won't agree as much. But we have to attack it through education in our high schools, our career and tech schools, and CCRI have to really step up, and there has to be better coordination.
Can I respond to that? I agree with Nick. He's absolutely correct. CCRI, Rhode tech schools such as New England Institute of Technology, and because of the support of the Senate President and the Speaker, as an example, CCRI is working with Electric Boat General Dynamics Division in Groton and Quonset in grabbing students from high school before they graduate, put them to work with a trade. So when they graduate from high school, they're getting a diploma from their high school and a certificate of completion of a training program where they're going to get a job, a good-paying job with benefits at Electric Boat. And that building and that complex, which will be built somewhere in South County, is being paid for with donations, private donations from companies, and through money from various state organizations such as DM. But with the support of the President and Nick, that is coming to fruition, and we're grabbing them early on in the high school. Not everyone will go to college. A technical trade is very important, and those jobs are well-paying jobs, and they provide good benefits, and they're putting people to work, and that's important. So grab them.
I just would say this is something that we've championed in the Senate for 10 years now. My frustration, particularly with CCRI, not rising to meet this challenge, I've articulated frequently, and I do think having new leadership at CCRI might make a difference. We do need to, and I think the Governor's Initiative Real Jobs Rhode Island recognizes this, we do need to hold our institutions of higher education accountable. Had the pleasure of sitting next to the URI president today, but URI, Rhode Island College, and CCRI, one of the initiatives Chairman McNamara and I have been working hard on is performance-based funding, and two of the critical criteria that have been part of that and why that discussion have been going on in evaluating our institutions of higher education include on-time graduation as well as certificates, not just degrees, certificates and degrees in industries that have been recognized as job producing. So this is an area that we have been slow to meet the challenge, and I am thrilled at this point that we as a state are recognizing that it's a challenge that we've ignored for far too long and working together to improve our response to that, whether it's at Quonset, whether it's with wind turbines, that we actually took a program we had at CCRI and it was discontinued. We have tons of jobs out there. And this goes on in any number of areas, that there's nothing more frustrating than to have our students graduating and not being able to find a job because of the area in which they decided to focus.
And what's equally as frustrating is the business who wants to hire the person and can't find the person with a trade. So you put them two together and you win.
Lori, can I just jump in? I know I don't want to be a dead horse here, but this is one issue I think you can find agreement among everybody on the stage, business and labor communities. It's one of my personal pet peeves. Really briefly, I think we place way too much emphasis in our society on college, college, college. College is wonderful. And certainly, GI Bill 40, 50 years ago, there were a lot of people that were suited and wanted to go to college and couldn't for a bunch of reasons. Not everybody wants to go to college. Not everybody should go to college. Not everybody should be an English major. I was a history major. Not everybody should be a history major. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing all kinds of things in life. And the problem we have in our school systems, from the local schools up to CCRI, and it's not just a Rhode Island problem, is we don't prepare kids who aren't going to college. My local public high school does an excellent job for kids on the college track, but our vocational facilities, due to funding and a whole bunch of other issues, are woefully lacking. And I'm sure that's true all across the state. We need to stop pushing college so much that we downplay or somehow denigrate the non-college track. That's the real issue here, I think.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David is a subject matter expert on workforce development, workforce education, and is nationally recognized, has done a lot of work throughout this country. So we thank you for your contribution, David. I'd next like to call up Michael Sabatoni. And Michael is president of the Rhode Island Construction and Building Trades Council. active in Build Rhode Island, the leader of Build Rhode Island, and a member of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Lori.
Michael.
Hello. Thank you. Bet you didn't expect to see me up here today? No, this is not a trick. Listening to the conversation from the audience, first and foremost, just let me thank all of you for your leadership on the Roadworks proposal. Put a lot of our members back to work, and infrastructure investment is pivotal, we believe, to the economic recovery of this state. Also, let me say, contrary to probably belief, 90% of what's being discussed up here, both the Chamber and the building trade unions are supportive and collaborative on, including regulatory reform and taking a look at our tax structure to make business more competitive. As we look at that and address a lot of the things that we've spoken about today, my question is, where can we go from here? Are there additional initiatives that can be considered as you take a look out into the near future, of greater enhancement of what we've already accomplished with tools in the toolbox, and continuing to get the economy in Rhode Island going, which the construction industry is a pivotal piece and component of the economy?
Madam President? It's certainly an opportunity, again, to encourage everyone to read our Green Jobs Rhode Island. But certainly the ideas that we've embraced there create jobs, whether it's resiliency and efficiency and renewables and resource recoveries initiatives. But in addition, I gave some thought. We get a heads up that one of the things that folks will be looking at what other possibilities exist. And hand in hand with green jobs, a green economy, being a green state, is the issue of our public transit. And I believe that as we work through this first plan having to do with our roads and bridges, one area where we can take a more comprehensive statewide look at improvement is mass transit, public transportation, including our bike and pathways, and looking at how we make, because that's in particular our young people, as they come here and they stay here, they're prepared to abandon their cars. And how can we make it easier to move around the state without having to depend on our automobiles? And hand in hand with that would come, I think, initiatives that would create jobs for the construction industry.
If I may, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, the budget has a lot of incentives, and we passed a lot of incentives that we called tools last year, and I think that's important. You have to attract new people. You have to encourage existing companies to grow. And that's part of the solution. But then you can't neglect the other side of the equation, and that's what Leader Algier was alluding to or spoke to, and that you have to have a competitive structure all across government. Government at some point has to provide for health and safety and the welfare of our citizens, but it's also got to be able to get out of the way when at the right time and let the business community take over. You have to have a competitive tax structure. You have to have competitive regulatory structure. You know, one of the things that quite frankly frustrates me, and I've said publicly, the Office of Regulatory Reform, I'm going to defund it and get rid of it. You know, I get fancy graphs out of them. I mean, they give you great books. You should all read them. They've got nice colors and they're pretty and all. But there's no regulations they're getting rid of. They've been at it for years. We say what a great job they're doing. And I know that you do have folks over there working hard, but there's no meaningful regulations that they're getting rid of. So at some point you have to be realistic, and you have to ask for and encourage and demand success. And we have too many regulatory burdens in the state. They're deep-rooted within the business culture, the government culture, and we have to start on eradicating them. So I think our tax structure is actually pretty competitive. We've all worked to accomplish that. But government has to be there at the right time, but also move out of the way when it's appropriate and let business do what they have to do. So in Rhode Island, we do have to work on finding the right balance.
And we have done a lot with the tax structure, and there's a little bit more to do. There's more to do. We need to tackle the regulatory reform, I agree. But what's the cost of having existing businesses expand versus attracting new businesses? We need to work with existing businesses that are successful in Rhode Island, work with them. Sometimes you look at the cost of attracting new businesses. It does cost us money, but we need to, and you made that point, Nick, identify the businesses in the state that are working well and what we can do to provide the resources for them to expand. And regulatory burden is something we hear often, over and over again, and we need to take a big, bold step in regulatory reform.
One of the things I want to say, two things I want to say. One thing, you've worked with us and Lori's worked with us, the Speaker and I have been leaders on, and the Governor put additional money in her budget on, is everybody talks about regulatory reform, but over and over again we've discovered a lot of the burden is at the municipal level. It's not just at the state level. And one of the things in the Governor's budget is to sponsor an initiative the Speaker and I have championed about streamlining permitting. And that's an area that the labor community can be supportive of us in. And I think it's an important initiative that the legislature's led. I also think business needs to work with us and the Office of Regulatory Reform, because one of the things that happened last year is there were a number of licenses and regulations that were proposed to be eliminated and abandoned. And quite frankly, it was the business community that came forward, many businesses at the finance hearings, and said, we didn't mean not to regulate us, or we didn't mean to take our licensing authority this way. And in fact, to the point where some of the things that we eliminated last year having to do in the area of cosmetology and licenses. So what we need labor and business to do is to work with us. Government is only half of the equation. Oftentimes, the business community and the labor community sees this as part of what they rely on to keep them going.
I think what business is looking for is speed and predictability.
Exactly. So things like the permitting initiative, I think labor can work very closely with us. We should have every city and town, the first 10. If we had said this was a mandate for the cities and towns, the statewide permitting, they would have all screamed. But we made it a voluntary program, and there was a laundry list, and everybody wanted to get on board. So the first 10 cities and towns are up and running, I believe, September, and the Governor's put the money in the budget this year to get the rest of them. So that's an area where I think you can help.
I'd like to thank Michael for being a great partner.
His people go to work. If his men and women go to work, and we give them good pay and good benefits, half of our problems are solved. I mean, that's the main key here. Get people to work, and you're only going to do that is if you give the tools to the businesses to do their job, and most of them can do it without the government help. If we give them the resources.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? I just want to say that it is nice to have labor and the chamber on the same stage. And whether it's been the expansion at TF Green or the nursing facility, each and every time that you two leaders have come together and supported an initiative, it has been success for all of Rhode Island. So it is nice, even though we make light of it, it is nice to see the two of you when you join together and push initiatives.
Just a quick comment to echo what Peter A. said, that when interests are in line with common goals, and that's when good things happen. Yep. And our interests have been in line with a lot of common goals. And when that happens with your support, a lot of good things happen in this state. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I was going to say what the Senate President said, which was we've worked together on so many issues, whether it be bond issues for higher ed or as you indicated, the airport. But there are lots of ways where business and labor have aligned. So our final questioner is Max Winograd, and it gets to the points that you all have talked about today about what do we do to address the fundamental underlying business climate issues, and how do we help small companies really start from nothing and grow and expand and survive and take off here in Rhode Island. And also a counter theme or an additional theme is how do we work with our students that are leaving higher ed to keep them here in Rhode Island to start businesses. So I'll introduce Max Winograd. Max is the founder of New Label Technology, and it was a company that he founded in his basement after he graduated from college in 2009, and he was cooking polymers in his basement, which led to a disruptive technology. So tell us about it.
I think that's illegal in Rhode Island.
Thank you for the intro, Lori, and thank you all for taking the time to speak with all of us here in the business community, and thanks for the opportunity for me to give this question. As a little bit of background about New Label, so we were founded in 2009. Our company develops unique packaging solutions. So we're developing new polymers and new materials that are going to revolutionize the way that companies as big as Amazon and as small as a mom-and-pop shop around the corner do their own packaging and logistics. And we've been in Rhode Island now for a little over 6 years, and I'm from Georgia. So I was not supposed to be here. I moved up here to come to school 10 years ago, and I've never left. So I'm proud to call Rhode Island home. I live right on Benefit Street. I met my wife here and my business partners here. I love Rhode Island. It's the best kept secret. My question is really focused around the technology ecosystem. So the technology ecosystem starts off at the very beginning, cooking polymers in a basement, to where we are today, where we're kind of growth stage. We've raised $22 million in private investment over the last 6 years, and we're continuing to grow, to then the big guys, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix. So taking all of what we've talked about and putting it in the frame of the technology ecosystem, I have kind of a three-pronger for you. So the first is, what are we going to do to make Providence and Rhode Island and the whole area more sticky for college students? I'm an anomaly. I came here and I was supposed to leave after 4 years. But what are we going to do at the state legislature level to help attract and retain the talent that comes here or that starts here? And the second one addresses the issue that you raised of what we do for the existing companies here in Rhode Island. In the tech space, we pay between $2,000 and $3,000 per employee on just two tax buckets: state unemployment and tangible property, which is a city issue, as you raised. What are we going to do on that level to help technology companies during that growth curve where they might not be profitable to lower their tax burden? Because it's not just income tax relief, it's tangible property tax relief. And then the last one, we look out here, and this is a who's who of the Rhode Island business community. But unfortunately, we don't yet have a placard that says Google or Apple or Microsoft. And I want to see that here. So what are we going to do at the state legislator level to attract those big technology companies to come here and help build out that whole ecosystem for the technology community?
Well, we've been doing a lot of work. We're promoting the 195 land. We have Wexford there. We've created a lot of tools to incentivize the growth of technology. We are paying off debt for students in the STEAM programs that commit to staying in Rhode Island. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to make Rhode Island stickier, and you have to look at tools and incentives. Regarding property taxes, that's local issues, and those are things that we're all very mindful of, and that we'll work collaboratively with anybody on. But one thing I will say, oftentimes people look at the state. These are local issues, and if the state had the resources to just appropriate and get and solve all those problems, we'd be thrilled to, but the resources aren't there. So there's going to have to be collaboration between the state, the local communities, and so forth, and the tax stabilization agreements that the leaders have worked so hard on, that maybe we address that for startup companies and so forth. Those are going to have to be policy decisions. But these are broad issues, and we have been working on them. I think the answer is we have to double down and continue to work on them so that we have growth of those types of industries here. But there's been a lot of focus on technological growth in Rhode Island, and I'm pleased to say that we're moving in the right direction. Our Commerce Secretary, Stephen Pryor, is seated right down there, and he's in my office. He works hard, and he gives me updates on what he's doing, and a very dynamic individual. The governor's very dynamic. Everybody's, I think, working to accomplish those types of goals. But you can't go from where we were 5 years ago to where we want to get overnight, and it's going to be a slow progression, and we'll keep having small victories, a lot of singles, and ultimately the Rhode Island will get to where we want to be.
I would echo that. I think the coming of the Cambridge Innovation Center is one, but there could be other innovation centers all over the state, just the way that we have seen in Massachusetts. I had the opportunity to go up and take a visit to the Cambridge Innovation Center. And for those of you who might be in Boston, stick your head in. It's a whole new way of doing business. But what it does is provide support systems to folks like you and gets you out of the basement. And you can have a conference room where you can meet clients in, and you can have mail services there. And it's a vision of what our young people in the future are. And in fact, because we're all talking about Wexford, and I found that most of my members didn't really know what Wexford was, we're planning a trip up to Boston to go see just what it is. The other thing I would mention, the Speaker, the Senate and the House, and the governor last year with her leadership, we did the first wave of the Wave Maker program initiative for forgiving student loan forgiveness in the high-tech fields. And the governor has proposed financing or additional funding in this particular budget. Now, it doesn't go to the tangible tax that I believe the Speaker announced, but it certainly I think is a great program to really attract techies, is to have a loan forgiveness program in those particular fields where we want to say to you, I can't think of any stronger message to say to you to stay than to forgive your student loans when you graduate. So once again, it was an initiative last year, it's in the budget this year, and it certainly has, I think, a lot of our full support.
Yeah, Lori, can I just add this? You know, this format is set up for you to come up and ask us questions, but really we're the ones that should be asking you questions. You already answered one of them, I think, in your second question. You identified the employment insurance and the tangible property tax. Those are the kinds of things we need to hear because, as you know, I'm sure, industries grow in clusters. And Rhode Island is, we don't want to say this, but we're part of the Boston market. And we happen to be a different state, but anywhere else in the United States, we'd all be part of the same state. We're part of that Boston market, and we have the same attraction to college students and innovators from that market if we gave them incentives to move 30 minutes to the south. Not just the ones that come out of the Rhode Island colleges and universities like you did. I have a work colleague, for example, in Boston whose husband runs a tech startup. You may even know him. I don't know. I don't know what he does, but he does something. He's pretty successful at it. They love Rhode Island, though. And they just bought a house in Jamestown, but the business is still up in Boston. I'd love to see them move that company here. So we need to know what are the obstacles to people moving here, and for the people who are here like you, what are the specific things you'd like to see changed? And this is the key point from my perspective, not just for your company, but across the spectrum. That's how we need to address it.
Well said. Thank you very much, Max. And continue to raise money, continue to grow, and continue to be disruptive. Max is a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors, and he keeps us real. So it's great to have folks like Max as part of our crew. Anyway, that concludes our luncheon. I'd like to thank the leaders of the General Assembly for being with us today. How about a nice round of applause? And we will look forward to seeing you at the State House later this week to discuss the infrastructure bills. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great day.